Good morning, dear students, Madame and Monsieur, gentlemen and ladies. So we have the new lecture, the first lecture in the new year. And as usual, today I am Professor Starchik from the Department of Human Morphology, the Northwest State Medical University, named after Mechnikova. And as usual, I'm waiting your response to know to know if everything is fine with the translation. Please let me know. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing the students in the information I have in my studio, but oh, thank you. I see you, Patrick Nahabi. Thank you for being here with us. And please, Patrick, let me know if everything is fine with the translation. Yes, thank you. I will remember your name. And oh, okay. Thank you, Shady. That's fine. You are here, so we are ready. We are ready to start our presentation. And today's topic is the limb muscles. It is the final part of myology, and we will discuss some issues referring to the anatomy of and topographic formation both of the upper limb and lower limb. So it's time to study, and let's go study. First of all, I'd like to say that upper limb, we will start with the upper limb, and this is a very important part of our body. As you see, a lot of artists painted their arm, because that is a really important part of the human body, because they are used for gestures, and we use arm in our work. But I'd like to say that the arm is a very beautiful part of the body. As you see, the works of images in painting over great painters like Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and other artists. This is another images of the upper limb with painted from the new or modern artists that show the work in the working process. They show the arms in the working process, and of course regarding the work, I also may say that the hands especially hands. This is a distal part of the arms. Sometimes help us, doctors, help doctors to understand what the person is doing, because very often the hands have specially features that they get after a specific work, and sometimes we see the hands for working person in the manufacturers, and compare them with the hands of, for example, the painters' hands, and the difference is visible. It's easy to understand what kind of work the person has. Regarding the phylogenesis, this is an evolution of the limb. We would see that upper and lower limbs of primates in evolution developed from the front and hind limbs of animals. I mean, primates, this is the monkey, these animals of the monkey groups, which was they developed in the humans, and the limbs transformed in the upper and lower limbs of them on the monkeys. In animals, as you see here, the skeleton of upper and lower limbs are similar. They have the same parts, and since the original function of both limbs was the same, and it was locomotion. I mean, the animals usually use upper and lower limbs for locomotion, but millions of the years later, our ancestor, that means the animals who was our parents, I mean the parents in evolution, began to use only the lower limb for the movements, and the upper limbs were freed for the labor. That transform in the different anatomy of the upper and lower limb. And you see the different upper limbs for the lizard, bat, bird, and even crocodile. And if you compare these limbs, upper limbs and or front limbs in animals, you see the same segments as the shoulder, the antebrachium, and hands, or we call that for human, of course, but it is also visible the same anatomy of such subdivisions of upper limb. Okay, but regarding the lower limb, the hind limb in primates becoming lower took on the entire weight of the body while standing and walking. In humans, the human foot lost the ability to grip. The toes became shorter and drew closer, and the foot a square and arches shape, as you see. The typical human foot has the the arches, which longitudinal arches like here, and even transversal arches, which help humans to keep our body in the vertical position, and while we're standing and walking, these arches has ability to protect our head from the vibration during walking. And we have some homologous features of the upper and lower limb. When we talk about homologous, it means that the upper and lower limb have the same process of development, and we would accent that first feature is that upper and lower limb girdles are similar. When we talk about girdles, we talk about this part of the upper and lower limb. We call this upper girdles talking about the scapula and clavicular, and we talk about the lower limb girdles, meaning the pelvis. That the second feature of the upper and lower limb is that the free section. We distinguish free section of the limb, and every sections has three segments. In upper limb we have shoulder, forearm, and hand, and we also have three three segment in lower limb. We call it thigh, lower leg, and foot. So that is a similar. Those are similar segments, and the last feature is that the muscles of the extremities form about 80% of the entire musculature of the body, and that is interesting because we use the muscle of the extremity both for walking and both for working, I mean for labor. So this is the typical homologous features of the extremities for human extremities. There are also some difference in anatomy of the limbs. Mostly the upper limbs, because it is a labor organ, or the organ we use for walking. The upper limb consists of dexterous and dynamic muscles, and they work as a speed lever. It means that the movement is quick, but the power is weak. It is a poor power. In comparison with the lower limb, it performs the locomotion function, and it has predominantly strong and static muscles. They work as a force lever, and we have big power, but we load the speed in movements. It is interesting. Mostly joints of the upper limb work as a speed lever, but the lower limb work as a force lever in comparison of the movements in biomechanical ideas. Then morphofunctional comparative morphofunctional differences we see in this slide, and mostly upper limb is a tool of labor. That is the famous idea that during evolution, during phylogenesis, we started to use upper limb only for labor. But in comparison with the lower limb, these limbs mostly are used for the keep our body in upright position and for movements. Upper limb is the organ of gesturing and balancing. When we talk, sometimes, especially for the nation who use the upper limb for the talking, I hope you guess what I mean. And this is usually upper limbs are used to explain what we mean, and when we talk, we just have gesture. And sometimes very rare, but the upper limb are also used for supporting our body, especially in old children or patients in clinic. They keep they use special devices for upper limb to walking and even for sitting, but the foot, the part of the lower limb, this is has a mechanisms as arches, and they act as a spring apparatus. Regarding the joints of the upper limb, the joints in the hand joints work in a more differentiation manner. It means that the movements are very different in comparison with the joints of the foot, because the foot is used just for standing and walking, and it lost their mobility and it lost the potential of the different movements. Regarding the shoulder girdle, this is the quite mobile part of the upper limb. In comparison, that the pelvis girdle is practically motionless, because it helps us to keep the vertical position of the body. So it was those were the differences, morphofunctional differences of the upper and lower limb. Morphofunctional differences of the limb is also visible for this picture. First of all, upper limb has less muscle mass than lower limb, and we see these differences quite in. It is twice lower than upper limb. I mean, upper limb is quite lower than the lower limb. The different muscles group in the homological segment, I mean shoulder and thigh, and of course in thigh we see three group of muscles, but in shoulder, as you know, we have only two groups. Most tendons of the hand location longitudinally, and they form the angle, but they have an angle in the foot. So this is the typical orientation of tendons in the lower limb, but usually we have the right orientation of the muscles of the tendons of forearm muscles. And it is interesting that in function for the upper limb, we see that muscles as a flexors predominate here, but in lower limb predominate power has extensors. It means then in general situation when with some problems in the central nervous systems, when the whole body became rigid, usually the upper limb are in the flexible position, but in lower limb usually they fix in the extended position. Couple of words we have to say about development of the upper and lower limb. As you see here, both limb developed from the ventral part of merotomes. This is a small part of the body, and we call it limb buds. And they usually are visible during from the 5 week embryo development, and this is the time when limb start to grow from 5 week. And for the upper limb, the origin of the upper limb is the cervicothoracic myotomes. This is usually this part of the myotomes. And for the lower limbs, only lumbosacral myotomes are the origin for lower limb development. And then you see that in 8-week embryo, 8-week-old embryo, we see that upper limb has the upper limb are longer than the lower limb. It means that this part of the body, I mean upper limb, started earlier, and they have predominate development than lower limbs. After birth, the lower limb grow more, and they became bigger than upper limb. But in the first studies of development, predominate the upper limb predominate in the development. Well, and now it's time to talk about muscle, fascia, and topographic formation of upper limb. As you see, the classification, we always start from classification, and you have to know classification of muscles. The upper limb has 4 groups of muscles. First group is the muscles of shoulder girdle. They're located around shoulder joint. Then we have shoulder muscles located on the shoulder. Then forearm muscles. This is a group in the forearm, and antebrachium, we call it also in Latin antebrachium. And the last group is the muscles of the hand. Some of the shoulder girdle muscles are located around the shoulder joints. We distinguish the deltoid here, then subscapularis, and supraspinatus, infraspinatus, and teres minor, as well as the teres major. This group of muscles we call, sometimes we call, especially in clinic, in traumatologist and orthopedic clinic, we call as a rotator cuff. When we talk about rotator cuff, we mean 4 muscles: subscapularis, First one located on the anterior surface of the scapula, and also we call supraspinatus, infraspinatus, and teres minor as the posterior part of the rotator cuff. What does it mean, rotator? Rotator is muscles which help us to rotate our shoulder in shoulder joints. And you remember that these movements, rotation, has two types of movements. Rotation inside, like in this direction, we call pronation, but rotation in the opposite direction or clockwise rotation, especially for the right shoulder, we call supination. And this is a two kind of rotation: pronation and supination. The subscapularis produce pronation, but supraspinatus, infraspinatus, and teres minor form the supination. And that's why we call these four muscles as the rotator group muscles. Next group of muscles we call shoulder muscles, and we distinguish anterior group, we call them flexors group, and posterior group of the shoulder called extensors, because they form extensor in both shoulder joints and the cubital or the articulatio cubiti, and for the anterior group we distinguish biceps brachii. It has two head, long head and short head, and we distinguish also deep muscles in the anterior group. First one is coracobrachial, and the second one is brachial muscles. That is the difference in anatomy of biceps and coracobrachial and brachial, because biceps has the origin on the scapula. You see 2 point of the here 2 point of the origin for biceps, and it is fixed to the bones of antebrachium. It means these muscles work as a flexor for both joints, for shoulder joints and for cubital, for the articulatio cubiti joints. But coracobrachial is the flexor only for shoulder joints, but brachial muscle is the flexor for cubital joints only. Forearm muscles located anteriorly we call the anterior group, and they are also flexors, but because this group has a lot of muscles, it has two layers of muscles, superficial and deep muscles. You see here superficial muscles, and here when we when we cut all superficial muscles, we see the deep group of muscles of antebrachial muscles, and the same divisions, the same layers we see on the posterior group. We call them extensors, and extensors have superficial muscles. You see them here. All of these muscles are superficial, and deep muscles. Typically, all of forearm muscles have long tendons which fix to the phalanx of the hand bones, and they flex not only the radiocarpal joint, but they also use as a flexor for metacarpal and for metacarpal phalangeal joints, as well as for the interphalangeal joints. They are general flexor for all joints of the hands. And the same we may say about the posterior group of the forearm muscles. In the hand, we distinguish three groups of muscles. Here you see the thenar muscles. They located laterally. If we look at the anatomical position, the right anatomical position, usually the first finger located laterally. So we call this group thenar or lateral group of muscles of the hand. Then we distinguish the medial group, and we call them hypothenar muscles. They move usually digital minimal and digitus minimus, but the hypothenar muscles are less than thenar muscles. And also we distinguish the middle group of the hand muscles, and they're located between metacarpal joints, and there are three group of muscles in the middle group. We call them palmar interosseous muscles, then dorsal interosseous muscles, as well as these four muscles in the lumbrical we call that lumbrical, what means worms in Latin, in Latin language, and they really look like worms, like the small animals which live in the ground. So this is this is a classification and some of the and the muscles of the different segment of upper limb. Talking about fascia of the upper limb, we distinguish two fascia: superficial fascia, which located under the skin, and so we call it subcutaneous fascia, and the propria fascia. Propria, it means the own fascia of the upper limb, and it is named regarding the region it is located. For example, we call it intrinsic or own fascia of shoulder girdle. This is located. It cover all muscles of the shoulder girdle group. Then this is the intrinsic fascia of the shoulder, located around the biceps and triceps, and fascia of forearm, you see it here, and as well as fascia of the hand. Talking about the upper limb, I have to explain you some of the topographical formations, because you have practical lessons and you will study all muscles of the upper limb in the practical lessons. But I have to explain you some of the topographical formation. This is what means topographical formation. This is usually a gap or fissure or some kind of fossa located between muscles, and this is on mostly all topographical formations contain the blood vessels or nerves, which sometimes they are visible, like in the axillary fossa here. And we study topographical formation in order to use them during surgical operation. It is important anatomical structure, I mean topographic formations, that necessary to know for all of doctors who who are surgeons, because they operate the patients, and it helps the knowledges about topographical formation, help doctors to find vessels and nerves, and they help also to avoid injuring vessels and nerves during surgical operation. And we start from the topographical formation for the upper limb, and first one we call axillary fossa. This is a depression in the skin. Usually it is visible when we when we abduct the shoulder, and this is fossa usually visible on the skin, and we call it axillary fossa. This is a depression on the skin, but if we cut the skin and dissected this region, we see the axillary cavity, or cavitas axillaris in Latin. This is a space located between different group of muscles, of the chest muscles and upper limb girdle, upper girdle of muscles, and it contains a lot of nerves and vessels. As a topographical formation, axillary cavity has four walls. Interior walls, which is formed from pectorals, muscles, major and minor. A posterior wall formed from latissimus dorsi, teres major and subscapularis. Medial wall, this is serratus anterior muscles, here you see it, and laterally this is biceps and coracobrachialis, two muscles of the anterior group of the shoulder. And except of blood vessels, the axillary cavity contains fat tissue and some of lymph nodes, which are important because this group of lymph nodes these lymph nodules are nodules which may be the group of nodules which may contains cancer cellular from mammillary tumor and in women. So doctors analyze lymph nodes of axillary cavity during the cancer of the breast, during the breast cancer, and it is important to know where these lymph nodes are located. Here you see the two topographical formation on the posterior wall, on the back wall of the axillary cavity, and that is a quadrangular space and triangular space, which contains also the nerves and vessels, especially the quadrangular space contains axillary nerve and posterior circumflex humeral vessels, but the triangular interval contains, it is, I think, triangular space contains circumflexus scapular artery and vein. So to avoid injuring these vessels, you have to know where these spaces are located. So please remember that the axillary cavity has the connections with the back during with the quadrangular and triangular spaces. Some of topographical formations we see on the shoulder. If we cut the shoulder, you see the two sulcus. Sulcus bicipital medialis, it's located here, and small one, sulcus bicipitalis lateralis. This is the smaller formation located laterally here, and in comparison with medial sulcus, where a lot of vessels, nerves, and veins, arteries and veins are located, the lateral bicipital sulcus contains only one veins. We call it cephalic vein. And I also have to say a couple of words about the third topographic formation on the shoulder, and it is named canalis nervi radialis, or spiral channel, because it has the spiral form. Sometimes we call this topographic formation, it is a synonym humeromuscular channel, and it contains, as you see here, it's visible the nerve. Here you see the radial nerve and the deep brachial artery and vein located. They are located close to the shoulder, and sometimes during fractures of the shoulder bones, the bone may injure the nerve and vessels located in the radial, in the spiral canal here. So forearm formations located, first forearm topographic formations located on the anterior surface, just anterior to the elbow joints, and we call it ulnar fossa, or fossa ulnaris in Latin. This is the intermuscular space between two muscles of the forearm, brachioradial and teres pronator teres pronator, and it contains also some of the nerves, especially medial nerves and brachial artery and vein located here. And three sulcus we see on the proximal part of the forearm. They also located between muscles, and the first one, sulcus radialis, it is here between the brachioradial and flexor carpi radials, contains radial artery, radial veins, and radial nerves. This is the point where we touch the pulsation of the radial artery. If you keep your finger on the radial sulcus, you feel the pulsation of radial artery. It is used for examination, patient examination, when doctor want to know how often our heart beats or contract, and we keep the finger on the patient sulcus radialis and understand the quantity of heart contraction. Except sulcus radial, we distinguish median sulcus located between the flexor carpi radialis and flexor digitorum superficialis. This is two muscles. And also the third sulcus located medially and contains also ulnar artery, ulnar veins, and ulnar nerve. It means that you can keep your fingers here also, and you will feel the pulsation of ulnar artery. So, but it is less the pulsation ulnar artery is less because this artery is located deeper than radial artery. So better to calculate pulsation in the radial artery than in the sulcus. But it is also possible to feel pulsation, artery pulsation in the sulcus ulnaris as well. Here, this is a section of the forearm, and this is the proximal part, and we see three channels here. You see the biggest channel, we call it canalis carpi, number 2. It contains the median nerve and tendons of superficial and deep flexors of the forearm. But there are also two small channels in the carpi region, which is it's located. The first one is canalis carpi radialis, and it contains only tendon, but you see also the canalis carpi ulnaris. It contains arteries, veins, and ulnar nerves. So all of these canals located under the fascia, which is the thick fascia, and this part fascia located between the proximal bones of the hands, carpal bones. We call in Latin retinaculum flexorum. Retinaculum flexorum. This is a part of the fascia, but there is also another retinaculum or fascia of the dorsal group of the forearm and hands, and it forms a retinaculum extensorum. Under this anatomical structure, we see a lot of tendons of muscles located dorsally, located on the dorsal surface, and this is this group of tendons has special synovial sheaths anteriorly and posteriorly. Here you see the sheaths for tendons on the anterior group, and this is synovial sheath for the flexors pollicis longis, and also you see the common synovial sheaths for flexors, but it come to the digital and continue on the distal part of the digital minimus. But personal synovial sheaths, you see, we call it proper synovial sheaths for musculus flexor digitorum on the second, the third, and the fourth fingers of the hand. And the same synovial sheaths we have on the dorsal surface of the hand, and they are located under the retinaculum extensor. Next topic is topographical formation, muscles and fascia of the lower limb. As you see, we have the same group, equal group of the lower limb muscles. We distinguish muscles of the pelvic girdle, then we distinguish tight muscles, leg muscles, and muscles of the foot. So the same group, homological group, we have on the lower limb. Pelvis girdle muscles have two subdivisions. Internal group, located inside of the pelvis. First of the biggest muscles is iliopsoas muscle, which combine two muscles, psoas major and iliacus. Joined together, they form the iliopsoas, which are located under the inguinal ligament here, and fix on the thigh. And the posterior group, sorry, it's not posterior, this is external, it is a mistake. External group of the pelvic girdle muscles located on the back and on dorsal surface of the pelvis, and this group has got more muscles than internal group, and the biggest muscles located dorsally is the gluteus maximus here. We also have gluteus medius and here, and gluteus minimus. So there are three gluteus on the dorsal surface, on the dorsal part of the pelvis: maximus, medius, and minimus. We also can find the piriformis muscles and the gemellus muscles around the obturator, and the muscles which has name quadratus femoris muscles, and even the external obturator, which located deep under the quadratus femoris. All of this group external group, usually used as rotators for the tight in the coxal joints. Tight muscles has a three group: anterior, medial, and posterior. The anterior and medial group are just power muscles, especially for it is true for the anterior group muscles, which are quite large in football players. Sometimes we call these quadriangular muscles and muscles of football players, and they flex the tight in the coxal joints and knee joints. Posterior group has only three muscles, and one of these is a biceps femoris. It is also has two heads located fixed on the pelvis girdle bones. Leg muscles has also three groups in comparison with the forearm, where is only two groups, and we distinguish interior muscles or group, lateral group. It has only two muscles, and posterior group. This is this group has two layers, superficial layers. We call it triceps cruris muscles, and deep muscles located just on the posterior surface of the tibia and fibula. Foot muscles has a plantar group and dorsal group. There are two muscles located dorsally. It is the difference in comparison with the hand, where there are no muscles at all, but on the dorsal surface of the foot we see four muscles located here, and the plantar group has the same differentiation, same classification as for the hand, but we distinguish the medial group of the muscles, lateral group, which connect tarsal and metatarsal bones with the digital minimus bones, and take note that in anatomical position for the hand, we call the muscles connected the hallux as a lateral group, but in the foot we call they are located medially. That is a difference, and we also have more muscles in the middle group of the foot, where we distinguish also plantar and dorsal interosseous muscles, as well as lumbricals muscles, and two new muscles we don't have on the hand. This is the flexor digitorum brevis, or short flexor digitorum, and the quadratus plantar muscles. Here it's located under the flexor, and also some of the tendons connected both group with the middle group. Regarding lower limb fascia, we distinguish superficial fascia located under the skin and propria fascia, which cover different group of muscles, and proprial fascia has different name. Gluteal fascia, which cover the gluteal muscles. Fascia of the thigh we call sometimes lata, which means the white fascia, or it is really good visible fascia because it's strong. And fascia of the leg is also propria or intrinsic fascia, intrinsic fascia, and also the fascia located on the foot here. Let me show you this picture and explaining some of very popular procedure in medicine when intramuscular injection. The best place for injection is the upper outer quadrant of the surface dorsal region of the pelvis, because this point, this location, this area doesn't contain the large blood vessels and nerves, so it is safe to use this area for injection to avoid injuring nerves and blood vessels. Here you see some topographical formation on the dorsal surface. First is the two foramen located between located in the dorsal region of the pelvis, and they are connected with the piriform muscles, which has up to the piriform muscles we see foramen suprapiriforme. It is here, number one, and it contains superior gluteal artery, veins and nerves, but we also see the bigger foramen infrapiriforme, which contains the inferior gluteal artery, veins and sciatic nerves. This is the biggest nerve in the body, sciatic nerve, and it comes from the pelvis to the dorsal surface in foramen infrapiriform. So there are two important topographical formation of the pelvis on the dorsal surface. Some of the topographical formations we see on the anterior region. And this is the two lacunas located under the under the inguinal ligament, and here between the pelvis and ligament we see the arcus iliopsoas. This is a formation between two lacunas. Lacuna musculorum located laterally contains iliopsoas and nervus femoralis here, and lacuna vasorum contains the two large blood vessels. This is the femoral artery and femoral vein. Medially in the lacuna vasorum we find one lymph nodes. Sometimes it is a group of nodes, but we call them pyrogoves because it was described firstly with the famous Russian surgeon Nikolai Pirogov. And another topographical formation located in the obturator membrane and contains artery, veins, and nerves with the name obturator. Obturator nerves, obturator artery, and obturator veins. This is the group of vessels located in the medial group of the muscles. Some of the topographic formations located in the fascia of the tide or the lata, fascia lata, has connection with the femoral canals. This is a pathological gap in the upper medial part of the vascular lacuna, filled with loose connective tissue and Pirogov's lymph nodes. Actually, we would say that canalis femoralis is not normal structure because it's we couldn't see in healthy humans, but it forms only with the femoral hernias, and usually this canal start from the medial part of the lacuna vasorum and end in the hiatus saphenous, where located fatty connective tissue and the veins we call the vena saphena magna, and mostly women than men have this pathological canal we call femoral canal or canalis femoralis. Another topographical formation we find on the between the anterior and medial group of muscles, and it calls femoral triangles. One of the important topographical formation helping to find the femoral arteries and veins, because they go through these triangles, and usually surgeons use these triangles to find the vessels. And this triangles ends in the channel, which has name Canalis adductorius, or personal name eponym as a Günther channels, which communicate the anterior surface of the tate with the popliteal fossa, and it contains nerves and vessels. This is the topographical structure to find femoral artery, veins, and saphenous nerves. It ends in the popliteal fossa. Here you see this one topographical formation located dorsally on the knee region, and it is also located between muscles of the thigh from superiorly and muscles of the leg inferiorly, and the popliteal fossa contains the artery and popliteal artery and veins, and which come here from the adductor channel, and this is the opening of this channel in the superior part of the popliteal fossa, and it all of these vessels come in the Gruber channel. We call it cruropopliteal channel, which located on the leg. Here you see the cruropopliteal channels named after Gruber, and it is located between the superficial and deep muscles of the leg. As typically for the all topographical formation, the Canalis cruropopliteus also has tibial artery and veins, and even tibial nerves. And the last foot formations located on the foot is two sulcus. Lateral plantar sulcus number 1, it's here, and medial plantar sulcus located between 3 groups of foot muscles, between medial and between middle muscles located medial plantar sulcus, and between the lateral group of muscles and middle group we find the lateral plantar sulcus as well. Some of the animals we distinguish after the long development of the lower limb, and then the most often anomalies connected with the hip joints, and we call it congenital dislocation. That's all for now, my friends, and I recommend you to come to the Moodle section, anatomy section of the Moodle, where you find the task for today's lectures, and this test will be opened till 18 till 6 o'clock p.m. So this is necessary. It's necessary to answer all 10 questions and get scores in the electronic registration. As I see today, we have only seven visitors in our lecture. It's not bad, but I think it is less. And I doubt that all of students will be able to study these topics themselves, because topographical formations of the upper and lower limb, these materials you hardly find in the student's book of anatomy. So, but fortunately, this lecture will be recorded, and some of you who had no time to visit our lecture, you can find this material in my YouTube channel. Okay, as I see, you have no questions, and but I think, Shadi, your question, this topographic formation has much involved. Actually, I don't understand your questions. What do you mean, involved? It means that all of topographic formations we were talking about in today's lecture, all of these topographic formations are typical for every person, for every humans, and they are used for surgical operation and orientation in the human body, in the upper and lower limbs during surgical operation. So that's why we study these structures here. Okay, that's all for now, and as usual, I wish good luck in the test, and hope to see you next week on our lecture course. Thank you for your attention. My name is Dmitry Starchik, and as usual, I will be glad to